Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. We had some NHL games last night. One barn burner at MSG that we'll talk about in a few minutes. But we will start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So let's talk about Kodai Senga. It's interesting because he made his way over to Port St. Lucie yesterday or the day before, and he's starting to throw. But word came out that the Mets had to make a decision when they signed him because he has some sort of elbow issue. Now, again, here's the thing with pitchers. There is no pitcher that's thrown 7, 8 years in the league that doesn't have some wear on his arm. Obviously, they're going to have it. I'm writing about this now for Full Press because there's different degrees of what I think you should worry about and not worry about. But what I find interesting is, that there's word that the Mets have, outs in this contract in case major injury happens, which, again, I don't know what that means because I don't know what they're considering major. It's just 1 year missed a major injury. I don't know. But they're sure he's going to be good for 2023. And I know they've ramped up for 2023. So it's almost like as long as we get 2023 out of him, we're fine. Then we'll worry about the rest. Mike, it's interesting because even with all the doctors in the world, and certainly the Mets had 4 look at Korea. And even though Korea claimed it was the same doctors and it wasn't, they had 4. And who knows how many they had to look at Senga. But, pitching is just a weird thing in sports because it's an unnatural movement for the human arm. You don't know who's going to have a rubber arm and who is. And this guy's never thrown over 150 innings in his life in a season because he's had a 6-man rotation at times. So it'll be interesting. It's the great unknown. The pitch that he has, the out pitch, the ghost forkball, it does look unhittable. And it's going to take a while for players to catch up to that. So he's going to be one to watch. I think the biggest reason they're taking the risk is because there's big financial reward for them in a lot of different areas besides winning.
Well, as soon as you said this and as soon as you mentioned it, because, full disclosure, Russ and I are in a fantasy baseball league and we're thinking about taking this player, is that this smacks very similar to what happened with Masahiro Tanaka, who came over from the Japanese league as, the best pitcher to come over since Hideo Nomo. And, and we heard of Daisuke Matsuzaka and all these great Keiagawa, all these Japanese pitchers. And
Masato Yoshi, he was pretty good.
Some hit and some didn't. And Tanaka was one that they thought was going to be like a number 1 starter. And don't get me wrong, he was good. He was good for a number of years with the Yankees, but he was never what he was sold to be. And he had an elbow issue that they thought he was going to have Tommy John. And instead he sort of pushed through, and he was basically a solid innings eater at the major league level. He was never he had 1 year that I would say was a top 2 starter statistics. But really most of the time he was
really good for 3-4 years, though.
Right, but he was not what he was sold as being. I mean, they were saying he was supposed to be a number 1 starter, and he was like a 2 or a 3, and he was decent in the playoffs, but he was never at the level that people said he was. And I just checked out of curiosity because he's gone back to Japan. And he still has never had the surgery, and his ERA now is like about a run and a half higher than it was in Japan before. So clearly it's something that as he's gotten older and he's 32, 33 years old, it's been debilitating. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case with Senga. I mean, the one thing I think is beneficial to him is that he's going to be behind, 2 Hall of Famers in Verlander and in Scherzer. And I would think there's a possibility the Mets go with a 6-man rotation because that they and I know Japanese teams have 6-man rotations, and I know that they've wanted to limit the elderly in terms of their innings stuff. So I would think that there was a possibility that they do that. I'm going to mute Ack while he's on a phone call. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be curious to see what happens, but that's the risk with all pitchers.
I think they will have a 6-man rotation maybe in September, if they are having a good year like last year, then I think you might see that. That's very possible. I would say the other benefit besides being a number 3 is his out pitch is not a fastball.
Right.
And so maybe the ghost forkball takes a little bit of strain off the elbow. Like I would tell you, and this is as a fantasy owner too, if his out pitch was a screwball or if it was a split finger fastball, I don't know if I take him because that does take a lot of toll on the elbow. But
although they say that off-speed pitches and pitches like the splitter put more stress on the elbow than a fastball. I mean,
no, that's what I'm saying. But this is a different is a different grip than the splitter. That's why I'm okay with it. That's what I was saying. You got to listen to me, Mike. If it was a splitter, I would not draft him.
I try not to.
You're not the only one.
All right. Here we go. Let's start the show.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, February 7th. Tuesday, February 7th. I had such a good streak going. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, February 7th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and it's still shaking.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eric Carlson, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. You see? I'm Eric Carlson.
Yes.
This podcast comes every Monday through Friday to fill in the comings and goings in the hockey world.
We'll fall off the chair. Well, let's start with the news that just came down a few minutes ago, because the Buffalo Sabres have followed up what I think was a solid proactive move before the season, although I was skeptical about Tage Thompson in one respect. They had another year on his contract at $1.4 million, and they could have waited. Now, it ended up being a smart move because he's hitting it out of the ballpark this year, third in the NHL in goals. So now they've got a good value on Tage Thompson, and they've seen a lot of growth in Dylan Cozens. And today they signed Dylan Cozens to a 7-year deal for $49.7 million, which is an AAV of $7.1 million. And Cozens is having a really good year for the Sabres. It's sort of a coming of age offensive year for the Sabres, where he's got 43 points, 17 goals, 26 assists in 49 games. He's a big body, Russ. We were a little skeptical when he was drafted whether he would equate to an NHL center. He seems to be doing that. We didn't worry about his sort of defensive ability and his size, but the offensive ability was a little bit of a question, but he seems to be coming of age.
No, I didn't even question the offense. I just questioned when they kind of rushed him and would he be a center? He's definitely a center. He's at almost 50% this year with face-off, so that's good. He's probably got the heaviest wrist shot in the league. I mean, I was at the rookie photo shoot and I was doing an interview with somebody, and I was in the penalty box. And after that person left the interview, Dylan Cozens was shooting at this net by the penalty box, and Mike Johnson was doing a spot for NHL Network. And after like 5 shots, hitting the net, missing, hitting off the glass hard, Mike's like, Russ, come out of there for 5 minutes. Let me do the spot, and then you go back and do your interviews. And it's true. The wrist shot, when you see it coming at you, it's unbelievable. Now, he should have more than 17 goals. That part eludes me. Maybe it's just going to be finding his exact spot on the team. But the upside is there. And so you're paying for the upside here more than, because if he was just going to be a 43-point guy, I'd say, this contract's a little on edge, but he could be more than that. He could get up to 60.
He's on pace for 70 right now.
He's not going to get 70.
No, he's not going to get 70. But the thing is, I think the reason why maybe his goals are down is he's on that number. He's not on that number 1 line. It's Tuck, it's Thompson, and it's Skinner, and he's on a second line with Olofsson, and I think. It's not Middlestate. I can't remember who the center is, but he's on the second line. He gets power play time, and he is. I think eventually he'll maybe get up to a number 1 level, but I think that's the reason why his numbers are a little bit down. But they score so many goals, even their second line is getting offensive production.
So I mean that wrist shot, because I thought I did the same thing with the Buffalo Sabres earlier. And I also, because I was told to go down there and check out Tage Thompson's wrist shot. I was told that he's got one of the best wrist shots in the league.
Yeah. He's got a really good wrist shot.
His one-timer, I think, is better.
One-timer is better. I don't think Cozens' wrist shot is better than Austin Matthews.
Well, I think Austin's is the best, but I got the second best.
I don't know. I think it's on par.
It's close. It's not as accurate. I mean, and it's
Oh,
not,
no,
as,
it's not as accurate.
not as deceptive. But
I'm just saying, forget about deception, forget about accuracy. I'm just talking about hard and heavy.
Speed, heavy. And you know who else has one of the best in the league? And this, who I think is the second best league, you will never guess in a million years. But he was traded from the Devils last year, and he's now playing somewhere else, and that would be Pavel Zacha.
Oh no, Zacha's got a heavy one.
The
Yeah,
craziest, hardest, most accurate. Which he reminds me of McKellick from years ago with San Jose. People were
Mahalik, yeah.
This unbelievable wrist shot. But yeah, Pavel Zacha's wrist shot is just frigging insane.
He's a big man. He's a big guy.
He's a big man, and he can get off. There was a wrist shot he took. A goalie scored off of his knees this year with his wrist shot. That was one of the hardest shots I've ever seen. And he was on his knees when he took it. It was just friggin' insane. Yeah. So
somebody's got to tell him,
but Eric Hollow's better.
Somebody's got to tell him that you shoot when you're on your skates and not on your knees.
I think he's figuring it out this year, Mike.
Well, it was actually because it was a 3-on-2, and it was because the pass was behind him. It was an amazing shot. It was an amazing play that he did. Yeah. And Zacha, yeah. So I think it's a great move by Buffalo, and I think
they're rewarding the guys that they drafted that are good draft picks that have upside. This is the way you're supposed to do it.
Well,
it also transitions really nicely to something for me because.
Well, let me just put one more thing before you transition. This is a sign because there's right now. Buffalo is a team. You got a bunch of young players who like where the direction is going, like Don Granato as a coach. It's mostly positive. I think this is a sign that they will get Dahlin signed in the summer because he's got a year left on his contract. Now, I think Dahlin's going to make $9.5 million because he's one of the best defensemen in the league, offensively, one of the best defensemen in the league. Yeah. So they're going to have to open up the coffers. And that might, they may have to trade a player off their roster right now that's making money because I don't know how many players you can, he's making $6 million now and it's now and next year.
I mean, they could lose Okposo. It wouldn't kill him.
Well, he may come back because he's captain. He may come back at a lesser amount.
This year's eventually they got to pay Powers too. That's the other.
Well, I mean, not yet.
They that's the thing. They might Power might take a deal in terms of a bridge like Dahlin did because he hasn't really.
That's what I think he'll get.
Yeah, but this is the thing: the Sabres are not spending a friggin' dime on a goaltender, and they really, for them to take the next step, I'm telling you right now, there's people who are believers in Luukkonen. I'm telling you right now, this team will not take the next step until they get themselves an established goaltender.
Well, you do understand
this for a second. Go ahead, you go, Russ. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I was just on Sirius, and I was watching yesterday the Bean Pot, and of course in the final, Devin Levi's in the final, Mike. Very good. Of course, people are going to say, well, he's just going to walk into the NHL and he's not going to do that. He will for 10 games to get his money, to get his year off his ELC, but he's not going to do that otherwise. So
he's a very good goalie, though.
Yeah, so is Caden Primo. Caden Primo did the same thing. He was nominated to Bean Pot, injured, really good goalie. He's still not ready. I mean, it's time.
I can count on one hand.
Levi's better.
I can count on one hand the number of goaltenders who have gone directly from the NCAA into the NHL and been a number one starter. I think Rick DiPietro was one, and he was the number one overall pick.
And Barrasso, I think, was one.
Right. Barrasso came out of high school, which is
he's out of high school, right?
Yeah, Acton Boxborough High School in Boston. I mean, but that's once a generation. These guys need at least a year in the American Hockey League, and right now. I'm not completely sold on Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. He's doing better than I thought. I think they need to get a goaltender to bridge for the next 2 years. Comrie is not a good goalie. Anderson's going to retire. They need a goaltender.
I don't know about that. I mean, honestly, is it so terrible to build first and then get the goalie because you can get the goalie.
No, but the thing is, if they have a goalie this year at the deadline, and there is rumor that they are searching for one.
Yeah.
They can make the playoffs.
I agree with Esmer here. There's talk about Arizona trading Valmelka. He's making $2.7 million. He's a good goaltender. They probably wouldn't have to give up a ton for him, and they've got tons of assets and prospects and draft. That's a guy that there's somebody. If they don't go after, if Demko is not available or if Binnington is not available or these guys who are rumored to be available and they don't want to go into free agency, Valmelka might be a guy they go after.
Possibly. Although I wouldn't go after a young goalie with the goalies they got coming out.
Well, he's 26. He's not a young.
It's all.
They need a 2-year goalie,
and
these Sharks shirts are not very slimming. The issue is when you have to.
I like the way they look, though. That's
I like the way they look with this like rounded neck, and then it's like that should you need the point thing here. It's just like
that's one of the few of the third jersey. I have to say this. I was flipping through the dial last night, watching a number of games, and the New Jersey Devils Canucks game. The Devils are wearing these black and white jerseys with the jersey. They look hideous.
Except I will tell you who play now. This is amazing to me. This is when things are going right with certain players in hockey, right?
Yeah.
So my brother, who watches occasionally, he's a Ranger fan. He'll watch the playoffs. He's he doesn't live in New York or anything like that. He's out in Chicago now. He sent a tweet to me today of Jack Hughes with a breakaway and Quinn Hughes on the other side of the ice trying to stop him on the breakaway. Quinn Hughes catches up to him enough that he gets his stick to bother Jack, and the save is made, I think, by Colin Delia. And Jack Hughes quotes after the game and says, makes fun of Quinn, saying, "Oh yeah, this was like it was midsummer, but I was out of gas. I was at the end of a shift." And the reason my brother sent it to me because it's like that brother versus brother aspect of things, which is great in sports, and that really showed on that play. And it has really gotten traction on Twitter, and I'm glad.
Yeah. I agree. That's all right. So my little transition for this is to stay with the Sabres. Is I've been told that Brock Boeser's trade is like happening any moment. Like that is basically days away. It could. I was told it was days away. It could be coming in as soon as today. And the Sabres are the number one team for him. Like I remember, I had the Islanders as the number one team for Horvat, so I've got a little good connection in there. This I'm telling you, the Sabres are the number one team for Boeser. Now
let's do our proposed trade type of thing here. If we're talking about Boeser, who's under contract for 2 more years at $6.65 million, so we know he's a scorer,
right?
He's a right winger. We know that Vancouver wants to make not prospect pick deals, but they want players.
Yep.
So if it's the Sabres. I would say the player that would have to be part of it would probably be Victor Olofsson.
Yeah, that's a pretty good name. I think.
Now, he's young enough. I mean, he's making $4.75 million. Swede, who could play with Elias Pettersson. Yeah. I think it's going to be more than that.
More than that, that could be the key player involved. There could be picks involved, obviously.
Yeah, but I would think Olofsson would be the guy to be part of it.
And what about one of those goalie prospects too? Like, I mean, that's the other thing. Like
Portillo.
Yeah, they definitely need a goalie prospect in Vancouver.
They have 2 players that will be traded before the deadline. One is Johnson, the defenseman, who was a former first-round pick, who is a left-shot defenseman, is at the University of Minnesota, is not signed.
Right.
And he could go the way of a Jimmy Vesey and be an unrestricted free agent.
They're trading his rights?
They'd trade his rights.
Before the deadline.
They already said that.
They don't have to do anything with the deadline with him.
Hold on. So
you could wait to but you could wait to the draft because I think
but did he say he's not playing there, or they don't expect
they haven't been able to get him signed, and the speculation
he's a talent. He's a talent.
Now the speculation is
the league too.
They was it Greg Johnson? It was that was his dad?
That is Greg Johnson, yeah.
So he's a talent, but
you can't trade that because you don't know if he's signing. Like, remember, unless like Adam Fox,
right?
You could, it could be a dead end. It could just be a negotiating session.
But Portillo is pretty much known that they're not going to sign him because they like Levi and Portillo.
Yeah, you would wait on Portillo too. You would.
No, I think they trade him now.
No, I mean I wouldn't take him in a trade. I would wait.
Yeah. Right. No.
Neither of these guys have to worry about. Neither is like eligible this year to trade. Eligible this year.
Yeah, they
play this year. Really, are they?
Well, yeah. They after Minnesota's season is done, if you sign him to an entry level,
they have to be signed to an entry level contract before the deadline. So that would be really difficult. Put that all together, I would think.
Well, no. You could say Minnesota goes to the Frozen Four.
Right.
I know this because Matthew Nyes is on Minnesota as well. The Frozen Four is the first week in April. I think it's April 7th and April 9th.
Right.
Yeah. After that, there's about a week before the end of the regular season. If the Sabres have traded Ryan Johnson to Vancouver in a deal, then they can sign him right after Minnesota his season is done and play him a game, and that burns the first year of his entry level.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It does. I don't think it eligibles for the playoffs, though. I think that's the issue. The
Yeah,
issue is
with Vancouver, it doesn't matter.
right for Vancouver. It doesn't matter. But I'm saying, if someone
with Buffalo, I don't think. See, the thing is, they would have to sign him before the trade deadline to let him play in Rochester, because I don't think this is a kid who's going to sign and play in the NHL right away. I think he's going to need a little time. But with Vancouver, they may do a Matt Fratton with him and sign him and play him a game to burn the year.
Yeah, here's what I would do. I would take Isaac Rosén and Cale Clague. I would take those two for Brock Boeser.
Okay.
Oh, well, I mean, but if they want a hockey deal, Russ, or they want a player would you say an Olofsson would be realistic?
Yeah, but I'd rather have Rosén than Olofsson. I already know what Olofsson can and cannot do.
Right.
I need a higher end player than that, and Rosén's pretty close to the NHL. I don't know what his contract status is.
No, he's first year of his ELC. But see, the thing is, you're thinking the right way. You're thinking the Vancouver should.
Clay can play right away.
No. What I'm saying is Vancouver wants hockey deals. They want players that.
I don't know if they want all hockey deals. I wouldn't be married to that.
Well,
yeah. I mean, they made a hockey / futures deal with Horvat.
Right.
Well, I think that's what they're looking at.
That's what this would be too. It's a hybrid deal. You get a guy you can slot in your lineup now, right, an area that you're weak in, defense, which is an area that the Sabres are strong in.
I would think numbers. I would think they'd want a higher level player than Cale Clague. I mean,
Rosén's a high level player, Mike.
I know that, but I think. I mean, first of all, Vancouver needs defensive help, and I don't think the Sabres. The Sabres are not trading Samuelson. The Sabres are not trading Dahlin or Power. Maybe Yoki Haru would be somebody.
I would say Clague over Yoki Haru. I already know what Yoki Haru can't do. Clague has not had a chance there. He's played 20 games.
Yeah, I rate Yoki Haru ahead of Clague.
Well, he's better offensively, but I think Clague can be a better overall defenseman, and he has not had a chance anywhere he's played.
And remember, Yoki Haru, I believe, is a right-hand shot, so that they've been having trouble getting right-hand shots.
In Rochester, Clague has 6 points in 14 games. And he had 2 points in 21.
Yeah, he's been around for a while. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, he
hasn't played that many games though. Go look at it. Yeah, he's only been around in the sense that
he's 24 years old and he's got 2 assists in 21 games. I think they would rather have Yoki Haru than Clay.
Yoki Haru is a defensive liability. They have Quinn Hughes. They don't need an offensively gifted defenseman. They just need a good all-around defenseman, which I think Clay can turn into, but given the chance. Remember, I don't care that he's 24. A lot of times guys can take till 25, but this guy has enough tools that I think you can do it. But again, I'm doing it because of Rosén, really.
Right. Well, I mean, if my owner was not Francesco Aquilini, I would say Rosén is a deal that it would be a good return on a deal. They want to reset and be competitive right away, and in that instance, I think you're getting a Olofsson who is a 25 goal scorer who probably could play with Pettersson, and I think they
also have to pay him. When's his contract up?
He's got another year after this year.
Yeah, that's not really – it doesn't do me much good, Mike. You're giving me a one-year guy that if he scores another 25 goals,
I'm on your side in terms of what I think Vancouver.
No, but you're giving me a guy that –
But I'm telling you what they will do.
You can't just naturally assume that they're going to be idiots.
Okay, let's see what the deal is.
Right, and you're not giving me cost certainty on Olofsson. You're giving me a guy that if he has a good year, I may not be able to afford to pay him.
I know, but I know.
Kuzmenko.
I mean, right now, Olofsson's got 23 goals in 50 games.
Yeah, I get it, but they may not be able to afford him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, that also plays into it too, right? So, and I don't think Rutherford's going to make a dumb deal. Like, I don't think he made a dumb deal.
Rutherford's doing the deal. I think it's going to be Alvin.
No, I don't think that. You didn't think the Horvat deal was a dumb deal for Vancouver, right?
Just to give you an example, Rosén's got 20 points rather. In 35 games for Rochester, he's 19 years old. I give him another year in the AHL, and I got a player. I think they can wait a year.
You don't have to sell me on Rosén. I think he's a good player.
But I think even for Vancouver, they could wait a year.
Okay. Well, based on what their MO has been, no. That's not what they the way they operate. They're stupid and they make stupid deals. Now, I think the Horvat deal was a departure because you almost couldn't screw that one up. They got, Beauvillier is a good player, and Ratu is a good player, and they got a first round pick. That they were going to get that pretty much from anybody in a deal for Horvat.
I mean, they could have screwed it up. There were other teams that were definitely involved.
Yeah.
We know Kevin's blatantly said that Detroit was involved, and
Boston was involved, and the rumor out of Boston is that Vancouver wanted Brandon Carlo out of the deal because they wanted a right shot defenseman, and when Boston said no, they looked at their prospect pool and said we're getting a better deal out of the Islanders. So,
so that was smart.
Yes. That was smart.
Well, who's to say they won't do that again?
Well, okay, it's possible. I'm not saying, but I don't think Olofsson is in a Boeser deal plus a draft pick is a bad deal.
It's not a bad deal. It's just they may not be able to afford him, Mike.
Okay, so
names up on the rumor chart, okay, because we're talking about Boeser. Okay, this has not been updated since the second. Because I haven't heard anything that really would change my feelings on this yet. And Bertuzzi, the same. These are the last two players in the rumor chart. These are the last players are updated. Everybody else was updated since then.
Let's talk about Bertuzzi for a second.
Let's go with Boeser. Let's have Boeser and finish with that. Okay, because other teams involved here. It's interesting. So you can look at a couple teams here. First of all, Columbus is an interesting one for sure because they are going to be they're a surprise team, I think, at the deadline because they really are dead set on getting better and improving moving forward. And if they can do something that moves forward for them,
the key on Boeser and Columbus is the fact that he's got 2 more years. And as we know, Columbus has trouble getting players to sign there. So they're going to trade for players with term. Right. And Nyquist, who's out for the year, is dropping off. He's a $5.5 million player. So they'd be able to plug Boeser right in.
That kills them because they really were going to get something for Nyquist.
Yeah,
it hurts. All right, the Rangers here at 20%, that's a backup for Patrick Kane. Okay, so
I can see that.
If Boeser's going before, as soon as you said, you could probably drop that down a little bit. New Jersey, 15%.
Well, let's just go back to the Rangers there for a second. Kane thing, because Elliot Friedman was reporting yesterday about Kane and how, and I mean Russ was on this about a couple weeks ago. Kane is not Kane. He's not playing well, and there's questions of whether there's going to be enough interest out there, in terms of, because Kane, you want Kane at 100%. You want the guy who can make a difference. And if he can't make a difference, then the $10.5 million salary, even cut in half, might be too much.
Yeah, then I got a 34-year-old guy that is maybe going to be a half point a game in the playoffs.
If his value drops, it becomes even more intriguing, I think, because if you don't have to give up first round pick for him suddenly, then a lot of teams become involved. He will still be traded.
Well, he has a list though. He won't go everywhere.
I know, but he may not listen. I mean, I think he's going to want to play somewhere. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll just say, you know what, I'll just get healthy and I'll sign with the Rangers in the offseason. I think he's signing with the Rangers in the offseason. I think that's a done deal. I can put an E5 on that now, just about.
If his value.
What does God say? Hold on, is God putting an E5 or is it just
no? God doesn't have anything to do with this. God knows, like I said before. God told me that Connor Bedard will be an Edmonton Oiler. That's a done deal.
No. You said Montreal.
I said Montreal. Right? I said Montreal Canadiens. That's what I meant Montreal. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of too many things at once here. Yes, Connor Bedard will definitely be. But by the way, an aside on Connor Bedard, did you see this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
talk about it.
We'll talk about that in a second. We'll get back to that. That's a teaser.
But this is the thing about you're being counterintuitive, and maybe in this instance it works. If the Rangers only have to give up a 3rd round pick for Patrick Kane, even if it's a diminished Patrick Kane, maybe they would do that.
They're not doing that deal, Chicago.
I'm not being counterintuitive, Mike.
Yeah,
I'm being told this by people. This is not like something that I'm just pulling out.
I can tell you, Chicago will still want more than a 3rd round pick. They will.
At least the guy who's worked for me for 12 years could know that, Mike.
I always think you're counterintuitive.
I know, but the rumor chart is based on things I hear.
I know.
I'm not involved in trading Brock Boeser anywhere. Anyway, so all right, so then the Devils, the Flyers are I still holding on here because I've still been.
They have always had some interest. I've heard it.
Always had interest, and this number might actually go up a little bit because if this trade's going to happen sooner than later, they might jump over the Rangers and Devils.
Is Boeser a Torts type player?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I think he would be.
He is definitely. He's
definitely a rah-rah guy. He's very motivated. Yeah,
the Flyer type guy. He was really very much fit into the Flyers atmosphere. And we'll get to Torts in a second. But Tyler Bertuzzi, let's talk about Tyler Bertuzzi while we're here.
Okay.
Because you don't think he's going to. I'm guessing you don't think he's going to go to Toronto.
I don't think he's going to Toronto simply because of the injury situation. Because even if they retain 50%, he's a $2 million player. They could fit that. But and
you take a chance if you can do that, man. You take a chance on that.
Right, but the problem is, and this is reported by Friedman and other people, the non-vaccination situation is complicated, and especially for a player based in Canada. And that's one thing now he can cross, he can cross into Canada because he's not vaccinated. But for players who are based in Canada, there is a complication. So if that's the case, then you might have to scratch. The Leafs may just wipe their hands of that and say, okay, we don't want to deal with that, even though he's the type of player that we want. And there are other players out there. I mean, I wrote a couple days ago about a guy like Maxime Comtois. He's not the offensive player that Bertuzzi is, but Bertuzzi's been hurt 3 times this year. And if the vaccination thing is straightened out, then I think there's a possibility, but I don't think it's a likely one. I think I would put the Leafs probably at the between 10 and 20% than 35.
All right. I mean, I think that if they can get him for $2 million going into the playoffs, he is the lightning killer that they need. Like, he's the kind of guy that they need for that series.
Yeah, no question. He would help a lot, but
they need 2 forwards, and I don't think.
I would give a conditional second for him.
Yes.
And I would make the condition like, hey, if we get past the first round,
or even say, hey,
I'm not joking here. That would be the condition.
Or even if he plays in 80 or 90% of the playoff games, that's right.
Russ, they would need a conditional second round pick, and they would need Detroit to retain 50%.
Right.
I think that could happen. I think that Detroit.
But I think what Mike's saying is true, though. They may not even want to get involved with that other stuff. That's the only thing.
Yeah, but I think from what I don't want to get into the politics of.
Unless you spoke about Fauci.
It has nothing to do with politics. It has to do with Canadian law regarding unvaccinated people.
Right.
That's politics, right? So, I mean.
No, it
shouldn't be, but it shouldn't
be, but it is. You know that. I don't think.
It's their medical situation right now, man. I can't say it's politics anymore because I cross freely back and forth into Canada, so it's not a problem for me. But for somebody who is a worker in Canada, apparently there are complicating issues.
Hey, I've had 4 shots. I've had 4 shots. I've had COVID twice in 2 months.
Yeah.
So, heck, if you're a GM, you're taking that deal from Tony Soprano, Maverick Borkin a third. Yeah. I would jump at that for Bertuzzi. Yes. There's no way Dallas is making that deal. Sorry.
No. All right. So the Panthers are also very, very, very high on Tyler Bertuzzi. I know they don't have first-round draft picks. It's not going to be a first-round draft pick. Florida is going to do something. They're not going to sit back and do nothing.
Well, it would have to be a hockey deal then.
It has to be a hockey deal. I think they have some players that they would move. And I would keep an eye on that. The Kings have always been into Tyler Bertuzzi. Whether or not they would do that. But Detroit, like we talked about, they have him obviously, and Boston's been thrown out there as well. So
just what they need.
Another powerhouse. So
okay, let me just look at one thing here because Florida does not have first for the next 3 years. They do have a second next year.
Yep.
So second and 23, Russ. So if they retained 50%, if they retained 50% of Bertuzzi, or they took back somebody like a Patrick Hornquist, who makes more than Bertuzzi,
I would not be making that deal just because. Again, I've already bankrupted my draft for this year. I can't bankrupt it for next year. I can't Now, if I know I can get that pick back some other way, then that deal makes sense.
Right.
But I don't know who else they're going to trade to get, because again, there's a chance they don't make the playoffs.
Does it seem like Grunquist should have been on the Red Wings at some point? Like he wasn't, obviously, but
no.
It feels like he should have been. Like,
No. He's like a poor man's Thomas Holmstrom.
Right, that's what I'm thinking of. Probably.
No, he is that kind of player. You're right.
Yeah, but okay. The only player that they could trade potentially for a draft pick would be somebody who they can't trade, like Radko Gudas, who's a UFA, because they need Radko Gudas because their defense is.
Yeah, the negotiating rights for Radko Gudas would be an 8th round pick.
Yeah,
I don't know. They like him in the locker room. He's a big part of
them. Yeah, no, they can't.
You understand? There's no 8th round anymore, right? You do know.
Oh yeah. That's what I'm saying. They actually. He is. When we talked about yesterday, players that are worth more to certain teams than others.
No, I get it. He's
worth a lot to them.
He is.
They can't trade him.
They really can't trade him. He's actually been a very good player for them. Like he's been a surprisingly good player for them in a lot of ways. Let's talk about Tortorella. No, before we do that, let's talk about Horvat last night in the Islanders.
Yes.
Right? Because the Islanders came in last night and they actually in that first period looked pretty damn good with Horvat.
They did for like 12 minutes. They dominated.
I mean, and then you know what happened? They ran into a wall in Carter Hart. Like Carter Hart made some unbelievable saves on them. They also hit it.
Not early though. Early he was shaky as shaky could be. Like especially with that puck on the line. Horvat hit his shoulder. He never saw it. There was a post that Hart never saw.
There were two posts in shore, but they also ran into as the game went on. Carter got stronger, and
for a period and a half he got stronger, and then I felt like he was weakening again. He was under a barrage. I mean, let's face it. 16 shots in the first period is a lot of shots.
He was exhausted, man. Like he was definitely getting pounded.
He was.
And they weren't just like straight on shots. They were moving him left to right, left to right.
They were.
It wasn't just like he was like bracing for shots from the point. They were playing off the rush a lot more than the Islanders usually play. There seemed to be a lot of nice chemistry between Barzal and Horvat. I thought the two of them looked really nice together when they played together.
Yeah, I think. Look. Barzal, but there was also the drop pass that Horvat never saw.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
That the Flyers took the other way. Right. It's going to take time. But here's my belief. My belief is he's good for the team. Sure, of course. Yeah. He was good on faceoffs. He's going to be good. What's he going to add in the grand scheme of things? 0.5 goals a game? Like if that is it, the problem with the Islanders is it's mentality team-wise, and this is going back to Trotz, and carried through with Lambert, and that is they had this barrage going against the Flyers, had some bad luck. It's 1-0 after 1, right?
Yeah.
Then they went into this playing perfect defensive shell, like we can't give up any chances.
Right.
And for a while they weren't, but then it totally negates their offense, and it totally takes everything out of their offense, and it does give the other team a chance to get back in the game. Now they did what? They got a power play goal, I think it was, right? And so their power play, I think, can improve. No question about it. But I'm going to use the example of this. If you remember when Pavel Bure went to the Rangers, I was covering the Rangers at the time, right? And this is like before his 8th knee surgery.
Right.
He had like 11 goals in 8 games. It was something that pronounced. He was instant offense. You put him on a team, he was getting goals every game or every other game. That's the way he was like that. Bo Horvat is not that, right?
Yeah.
He adds to the overall scheme of it. He'll get them a couple wins down the line, right? But he didn't, and he may not transform their offense. He might make their top line better, but he's not going to transform that whole team mentality is what I worry about.
I think exactly the opposite. I think that he is the guy to transform that team.
I'm not surprised.
No. I just think that he's the part of the reason he's so valuable is because he's the kind of player who does motivate his teammates. Like he is the kind of guy. And I thought last night the Islanders had us jump in their step. That was that first period.
They did for 12 minutes.
No, but even the first 2 periods there was some pretty good.
The second period wasn't great. I don't feel for the Islanders.
I mean, pretty much the Islanders. The Islanders are what we think they are, which is a team that has a great goaltender in Sorokin, has a pretty good defense, and has a questionable offense. Now, Horvat is having a career year, and it may take him a few games to sort of get involved. The Russ was saying he was playing with Barzal, and maybe that connection will breed a lot of goals. But honestly, I don't think they subtracted Beauvillier, who is I know he's inconsistent, but was a decent player, and they added Horvat. and there's going to be an adjustment period. I still don't think they have enough offense. I really don't.
They have. I mean, you say they have a great goalie, like I said. Like you said, they have
They have 2 great goalies. Varlamov played terrific.
He played terrific last night. They have the best tandem maybe in the league.
Yeah.
You know, flat out. You know, so that I think gets them into the playoffs. Honestly, I do, because when you have a good goalie,
they've had it all year. They're still not in the
scored
playoffs.
2 goals. That's all they do is every game they score 2 goals.
It wasn't about they look for chances, not goals. Last night I saw the chances for the Islanders I haven't seen in other games. Like there were posts. There were a lot of posts.
Well, they also were playing the Flyers. We have to take that into
they were, but they also were playing a good goalie and Carter Hart, who does so. I mean, the Flyers are they can Hart can get hot, and sometimes he does look lucky even in there. But that's the sign of a good goalie, right? Like Hart has that ability.
Do teams win on chances or goals? They win on goals.
Chances. Teams coach for chance. You coach for chances, Mike. Coaches will tell you all the time they coach for chances because eventually chances become goals. You can't, that's all you can do now. Do the Islanders get a lot of chances a lot and not finish them because they don't have a lot of snipers? Sure.
I think the Islanders need to make another trade to get more offense to have a good chance to make the playoffs. Right now, I still have them on the outside looking in. But the thing is, if Sorokin has a good 2 months where he's stealing games left and right, they could sneak in. I just don't think I think the Horvat deal moves the ball a little bit, but I don't think it gets it over the line. And we're
gonna have to see how the first 5 games of Horvat are gonna tell us. Like to me, like last night you saw the chances, you didn't see the goals, you saw the chances. Now will they continue just to get chances and not goals? Then they got a problem.
I mean, I was listening to Sirius yesterday, and I thought Marty Baron made a very good point. Yeah. He didn't think the Islanders would make the playoffs because he figures they have to go like 22-8.
Right. I don't think he's right about that necessarily. I mean, I get it. I get that people always say that, but I think that there's what's happening in this situation is you've got so many teams in this race. It changes things a little.
Well, and that's the problem right now, because if you look at the race in the Atlantic right now, most teams are at anywhere between 49 and 53 games. The Islanders have played 53. They've got the most, and they're on the outside looking in with 57 points. Pittsburgh's got 4 games in hand, and they're tied. So, and Buffalo's got 3 games in hand, and they're 1 point behind. So,
I'm going to teach you about math here, Rick. Sorry. I don't like to do it, but here's the math. Back when Chuck Fletcher said the Flyers were only 5 points out of the playoffs, and everybody screamed, they're now only 6 points out of the playoffs, and they're no better. Trust me.
No, I know. And listen, and the math that you're doing, Mike, there is very ironic because we had this same exact discussion last year about the Islanders having several games in hand and how they could easily get back.
But there were 14 points, 16 points.
No, but they made up a lot of those points. But at the end of the day,
in garbage time, yes,
games at hand are games at hand. And yes, I mean, these are teams that win roughly. They roughly get 2 points a game. They're roughly 50% teams. They roughly get 1 point a game when you think about it. They're 1 point a game teams for the most part. They're winning as much as they're losing.
Right now, you have 5 teams within 4 points of each other for 2 spots.
Right, and they're all going to get 1 point most of the time. So what's going to end up happening is, yes, the games at hand will put the Penguins up by 2 points or 3 points on the Islanders. Maybe the Sabres go up by 2 points. But then at the end of the day, the teams are playing each other still. And I like the way the Islanders match up against the Sabres. I like the way the Islanders match up against the Penguins. I think those are the games that are going to matter for the Islanders. That's what it's going to come down to. It's going to, for those teams, for the Penguins, Sabres, and Islanders, it's going to come down to playing each other. So that's just reality.
I'm going to give you 2 stats. It improved slightly yesterday, but over time, I'm not sure it's going to. The Islanders are 11-13-3 on the road, and they're 0-3 in shootouts.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen,
their season's on the line, and there's a shootout. I'm going on FanDuel and betting against it.
Now, Horvat's a good shootout player too.
Yeah, sure. That's one guy.
Okay. But again, some shootouts they're best of 3. There are 3 players aside, so one guy is 33% of your shootout team.
They've got to make hay in the next. I'd say in the next 2 weeks because they play Seattle, Vancouver. Now Seattle's first place in the Pacific.
Yeah, but they match well against Seattle.
Vancouver, Montreal, and Ottawa. So those are 3 of the worst teams in the league.
Yep.
Ottawa's only is out on the outside, and then Pittsburgh, Boston, Pittsburgh.
That's it. It's a big. It's like you say. I mean, that's a really.
That's their whole season right there.
That's their whole season.
That's why this trade was made now and not at the deadline.
They lose those 2 games to Pittsburgh, they might be done before.
Yeah, no, they might be. But like I said, they made the trade now. And they didn't get a rental. They got a player that they're going to keep. So, but they also did make a trade.
And they got a cap that they can't figure out.
Well,
right. Yeah.
They have 4 players for $7.5 million roughly for next year. 4 spots. That's not a good place to be right now. Yeah. And now you're telling me I'm going to have to dump Pajot or Bailey in a tight cap league?
Yeah. I don't think they'll dump Pajot.
And they're going to lose Mayfield at the end of the year.
And they're going to lose Mayfield.
I talked to him, and Lou loves Pajot too much. I don't think he would dump him.
Okay, and there's a lot of scouts looking at that game yesterday, probably looking at Mayfield too in case the Islanders don't make it.
For sure. Okay, so can we go to Tortorella?
Yeah.
Go to Tortorella, and then we got to talk about that Rangers-Calgary game.
Okay, yeah. So Tortorella sends a letter out to the fans. It's not too different than what the Rangers did a while back when they sent their letter.
But this is the second one, right? So this is the second letter.
This is the second letter to the fans. And I'll read just parts of it here. At the beginning of the season, we set out to build a foundation of a future and a standard for how we're going to play night in and night out. So that is definitely when you're talking. I'm going to, as a Flyers fan, I'm going to interpret to you because I've been around the team forever. That's what the Flyers fans want to hear right away. Like that, they want to hear. They haven't felt a foundation. They haven't felt like a Flyers hockey in a long time. So that's the
for a sales pitch. You have to have your best paragraph first,
right? And he did. He got his lead. Okay, so there you go. Now that we're halfway through the season, I want to share with you what I've seen from our guys. Come back here. Share what I've seen from our guys. I have been very pleased with our team's effort and hunger to compete. Perhaps more importantly, I hope that you've noticed too, I love the way this team has consistently responded to the challenges we face, both as individuals and as a group. Throughout the locker room, our players are showing a full commitment to getting it right.
Which isn't true.
That's definitely an overstatement.
It's a hope.
It's a hope, right?
He's not lying, but it's not true either. More
players are that way than they were last year.
Yes.
All right. They definitely battle longer in games when they're out of it. This season, I've challenged the veterans of the team, and I've been very happy with their response. Beyond the stats, they've shown a willingness to adapt, compete, and lead our group both on and off the ice. Now I'm not going to lie to you, and I want to be clear about this. We're not there yet. This year was the first step in building a future of the Flyers and restoring our reputation as one of the most respected teams in hockey. All right, that's the beginning of this. We're in the thick of the season right now. We're going to have to see how our group responds to the challenges. And finally ends with this. That excites me because I can promise you this. The answers to those questions will come. You and I will find out together, and we will be even tougher team for having gone through it. That's because we're in the midst of establishing an identity, not just an identity, but an identity that reflects the city of Philadelphia and the proud history of the Flyers. We need you, and then this is bolded, the last sentence. We need you with us. We're going to get this right. We're going to make you proud, and together we're going to remind everyone what this team is all about.
So 2 things. So yesterday, pre-game, Torts talked about, hey, it's the next part of the season. We got to come out like gangbusters. They didn't. Here's what he said when they asked him after the game, how disappointed were you that they didn't set the tone in the first period? Yeah, we got it fed to us in the first period. That's not good. He just got them all riled up to start this next part of the season, and they fell flat. That's one thing.
They did fall flat, but I think the Flyers fans at this point will take the honesty over not saying that. Like I think
I get it. And then here's the other part, though, that's worrisome.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about in the Ranger game is what didn't happen in the Islander game, and that is the Flyers did not protect home ice.
Right.
They did not. And so, again, this standard is there. He has said what the standard is, and I believe there's 20% of the team that are not on board with it. And you know what players, we can go through a list of players if you want.
Yeah. No, there's players that aren't on board with it for sure.
And we could see when they're playing, they're not on board with it. Yeah. And he knows that. But the problem is he can't do a lot with the cap either.
Well, no, and he's not the GM either. So
he's not the GM, and he's talking like the GM.
He is talking like the GM, and I think that's because, and I think this letter was specific. It's interesting this letter was from the coach and not the GM in some ways,
correct.
Right? Because I think people like the Tortorella. Like Tortorella is more of a Philly type of guy. He definitely has that kind of thing. And where Fletcher's more of a Canadian, like he definitely has a Canadian type of personality, like, more polite, more like, we'll get this together. We're doing the best we can. We're going to get better. But yeah, he definitely, I thought this was a good move by the Flyers to put this out. I thought it was overdue.
It doesn't hurt them. I mean, I think there's a segment of the Flyers fans that like it. There's a segment that don't care about anything other than winning. And then there's the other segment that don't care about the letter, and they ripped it up and they said, I want to see, more this year right now, and they're not seeing it.
It's also very smart to do it this week, Russ.
Sure.
Like I mean, when you think this week in Philly sports, no one's going to be talking about this letter. You know what I mean? Like on the sports talk station.
Yeah, once Saturday hits, forget it.
Even now, you're in the middle of like the Super Bowl, right? So this is this is a town that talks Eagles 99% of the time when they're losing in the off season, and and the Flyers are playing. So with the Eagles being in the Super Bowl, no one cares right now about this.
Right, but the thing is, had the Flyers come back and won that game, it may have set a good tone with the letter.
Yeah,
because of the way they started that game. That is my problem with this whole thing, this whole equation, because it didn't translate on the ice, so it's just talk.
I mean, yes, that's true. You can't really control that, though. I mean, you can't. I mean,
you can. The coach, is the guy.
I honestly felt like yes, they were dominated, but they were also going up against another team that's better than them that had to win. Like
but that's the whole thing. That's the test.
But the question is, how much does this mean? And I'll tell you from an outside perspective, I think it means nothing. It means something. Let me finish. Yeah. I think this is they know this team is not good, and all this talk. I mean, okay, you can say, well, we're going to get back to the glory days of the Flyers. It's empty. You want to get back to the glory days of the Flyers? Get some good players, because you don't have enough of them. So a couple of your really good players are out maybe for their careers. You don't know about Ellis. You don't know about Couturier. There are players that don't fit Tortorella's style. It's going to take a year or two to sort through the players that don't fit, to get rid of them and to bring players that do fit. And until that, this is just delaying. It's a delay tactic.
Now listen to two more quotes.
Okay, go ahead.
We played a better second. Like I said, it was men against boys in the first. Yeah. Played better in the second. We had a lot of almost chances. And that was the thing. You never were thinking once that the Flyers could win that game. They might have been able to tie it, but nobody was thinking.
Yeah, I was surprised that they kept it close, to be honest, because the way they started. Like the way it started, you felt like the Islanders
the coach knows it.
Yeah, but you just because the letter comes out and then this particular game, you'd love a great performance in this game. Should you have waited to put this out?
Well, isn't that the ultimate test, though? They had time off. You had time off. Hold on. They had time off. They had a full practice the day before. They were home. They played at home.
Yeah.
And they lost. And now they have a day off today. What does that tell you? Come on.
They did, but I think that at the end of the day, they played a team that the team they played was so desperate, had just made a big trade, had just signed a big player, and they kept that team that they really shouldn't be able to play with to a 2-1 game. So you could look at it a bunch of different ways there. Like bottom line is Tortorella loses a lot of 2-1 games. Like he does. That's the Flyers have lost a lot of low scoring games this year, right? And that's
focus.
But what this letter is, and Mike, you're right about everything you're saying. Part of the Philadelphia Flyers identity is the lore of the Philadelphia Flyers. And it's hard to get around that, like that, being around here the whole time. It's more than just like, I can't think of any other team in the Philly area that has the same kind of lore that the Flyers have. Like they have, they all have their own little things here and there, but the Flyers are what the Flyers are because of that they were unique and interesting, or else they would have been just another team. Like they became something to the city, they meant something to the city, and they represented something to the city for a long time. And that's why they have the fan base they have. And that's why they need to hear this, because otherwise you're seeing a very apathetic building, which is really.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But they booed a lot yesterday. A lot.
And they're going to boo. And I don't think Tortorella has a problem with them booing. I honestly think.
No, he doesn't.
What he's saying in this letter is he's like, I hear you. I know we're going to get better. I think the problem is that, you can sit back and debate that they have some guys that shouldn't be in the NHL on their team for sure.
Right. And there is a point. There's guys that he likes that would not be on good NHL teams and shouldn't be on this team. And going forward, there's going to be a point where he needs to change the way he coaches too, because I don't believe the way he coaches is going to win you a championship anymore in today's hockey.
Okay,
We're not there yet, so we'll wait.
Can we talk about like the game that was the game of the night instead of a game that's sort of boring? And Russ we were talking about before the show about like the hue and cry out there about the Jacob Trouba hit. First of all, there were a number of hits, there were a number of fights. I didn't see the Sammy Blais hit on Milan Lucic until that was apparently what started it all, and there were a bunch of fights. And then Trouba steps up and destroys Nazem Kadri with a clean check. And, everybody this morning is like, oh, that kind of hit should be outlawed. You know what? I'm telling you, the wimpification of the fan base of the NHL, where one player gets hit with a clean check, and then all of a sudden everybody's got to drop their gloves and attack Trouba for a clean hit, and everybody's calling for a 25-game suspension, like that was a Raffi Torres hit. Give me a friggin' break.
Think about it. He's a defenseman. He's defending his home ice.
Right.
If a guy comes in there, he is sending you a message. You want to get to the net? You want to get past me? You've got to get past this.
I have no problem with Calgary players responding to it.
No, I don't care if Calgary responds. I mean, I think him to fight is stupid, but whatever. He fought.
I think it's weak. It's like if it was a Raffi Torres predatory going after the head hit, and then I have no problem.
I would say the same thing.
Right. But it was a clean hit. And the only thing I think is that Kadri's helmet flew off, and Dylan Dubé thought it was illegal, and then he went after Trouba. So
first of all, Mike, remember the speed this is happening at, and not everybody sees the hit. They see the helmet, they see the things like that, and they see Kadri. They see their all-star laid out. I mean
Daryl Sutter had no problem with the hits.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody had. I don't. At the end of the day, there was no problem with the hit, but I also would have had a problem if Calgary didn't if the players don't respond.
Okay, that's fair. But
I think this is one of their best players, and he's just got laid out.
The outcry act that we hear is, you know what? And I said this on Sirius. If you think these are bad hits, your GM wants a guy like Jacob Trouba. Trust me, every GM does. And if you're in the playoffs, you'll want a Jacob Trouba. Now, again, if you're a Penguins fan and you're going to say, well, he targeted Sidney Crosby, whatever. Like, listen, stuff happens in playoffs, and this is why you have guys like this to neutralize the opposition. And I'm not saying take him out of a game, but if a guy gets hurt, he gets hurt. Like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
I was texting with another reporter online yesterday, and after talking about the hit, I said, how many GMs want a defenseman like Trouba? And he said 32.
Oh, yeah.
Every single one of them. Now, maybe they don't want to, Joe Morello was like, oh my God, they're paying Trouba $8 million. You know what? Last night, that's the reason why.
And that's what I was trying to say.
Last thing I'll say, and then we're going to end the show.
Changes games.
The last thing we say is going to end the show is this. Trouba is also a great example of how you have to wait on defensemen.
Right.
Like, he was a player that you could trade for at one point very easily. Like, for much of his career, he was available. And now he's the star. Like, I mean, but you had to wait on him. Like
yes.
Well, no, he was good. He was good in those.
He was a huge prospect, but he
was good.
I'll give you the quick evolution stage.
He wanted to get out of Winnipeg.
He was on the NTDP. He was a terrific offensive defenseman who could skate and had some physicality. They definitely screwed with him in Winnipeg, and he got to the point where he's like, listen, I don't want to play the other side. I'm playing my natural side. Then there became some things, so I think it affected his game. But he definitely got stronger in the last 3 years. Maybe he's a workout buddy with Kreider. He always had a certain amount of strength, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And he always was a guy who was committed to the game, because I saw that when he was with the NTDP. I was in the World Junior Camp and such, and really had a chance to speak with him and see him in college.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. You do wait on a guy like this because he's at his peak right now.
Yeah, which is he peaked a lot later then. I mean, I wouldn't have thought this was going this way, like with him. Like, I mean, in Atlanta.
Listen, Ranger fans complained about him and his salary 2 years ago. Same as Kreider, and then all of a sudden they're not.
All I know is when he signed that 2-year bridge deal with Winnipeg, and everybody was talking about him being traded everywhere. If you were a GM that was a guy you tried to trade for. Now he played out that deal. He went free agency, or he got traded to the Rangers. They signed him to the long-term extension. They were the ones who paid the price. I'm sure there are other GMs right now that are kicking themselves, seeing the way this guy is a difference maker, and he can change a game with one hit. That game was out of hand. After he had that hit, Everybody was keeping their head up because he had the Bombay doors open. So
right. No, I mean, and I have Penguins fans who believe that the Penguins win the Stanley Cup last year if it wasn't for Jacob Trouba. So it's like that he definitely he's a factor, and he's a huge factor, but he's a much more of a factor now than he was like in Atlanta or Winnipeg. That's what I'm trying to say. Like,
sure. I mean, I don't disagree with that, but again, he's also like found his spot. He's found his voice. They made him captain.
Yeah. I mean, it just shows the hockey players in the right place. I mean, it matters where they are. Like it matters their situation so much more than people realize. That's why good agents are good agents. All right, remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We'll be back again tomorrow on Wednesday. That will be definitely Wednesday tomorrow. I promise you that. We'll talk to you then.